Hey guys, welcome back to my Animal Adventures YouTube channel, and today I want to talk to you about the most expensive snake in the entire reptile history, and that would be a snake that actually was worth $150,000, and it just kind of blows me away that any animal could be worth that much. You think about, most people are buying houses, paying on the house, $150,000 house for 30 years, and here we're producing snakes that are worth $150,000. And I'm going to show you what snake that is in this episode. So to kick things off, I want to show you one of my hatchlings from last year, and I pulled out the tub, and this is it. This is actually looks just like a normal ball python, and believe it or not, actually Brian Barczyk was importing some of these ball pythons from West Africa. They all come from Benin, Togo, and Ghana. That's where they're originally from, and you can actually get them over there as an import and bring them over. And if you find something really unusual, you kind of rolling the dice, taking a chance. And this was actually in one of his shipments, a snake just like this, missing a few scales from the top of his head. And it was kind of an afterthought. The guy said, "Hey, I have this snake with a few scales missing from the head. Do you want it?" And he said, "Sure, I'll take it." And come to find out, later on, he actually bred this to a normal ball python, and half the babies came out with scales missing from the top of its head. And then he had the idea of breeding two of them together, and he thought for sure he could get a totally scaleless ball python. And sure enough, the first year he bred them together, he actually produced a ball python with no scales at all. And as the story goes, someone actually offered him $150,000 for that snake, and he actually turned it down, which is pretty incredible. And when I first started in the ball python craze, I started buying snakes. Actually, I didn't think I'd ever have one of those. Take a look at this. This is Morph Market. This is a sold snake from 5 years ago. Here it is, just exactly like that snake. It's a scaleless head ball python. And take a look at how much they were selling for back then. $45,000. And as soon as they would post, they would sell instantly. And it was just amazing. I couldn't even believe snakes could be worth that much. So I jumped into the scaleless head project last year, and I really had some good success with a lot of my pairings, and I hit the odds pretty good. And I actually want to show you, just what the scaleless head can do to a ball python. So this is one of my pastels, and a pastel is really inexpensive now. They sell for typically under $100. Just a regular pastel ball python. It's a codominant gene. So if you bred it to a normal or another snake, 50% of the babies would come out pastel. And actually, I have a pastel scaleless head, and look what the scaleless head does to the pattern and the color, the intensity of the color. It's just pretty amazing. Just the scaleless head by itself, and not even producing the totally scaleless ball python. It just really enhances the color as a standalone, just the scaleless head by itself, which is pretty amazing. So I also have two scaleless head lemon blasts that I produced last year, and they're really high expression scaleless heads. And when I produced these snakes, they were worth $6,000 a piece. It was pretty incredible. And the prices come down quite a bit, but I'm definitely hoping to actually produce the totally scaleless lemon blasts here in the coming years. So a lot of people will come over and they'll visit my reptile room, and I'll show them like a $100 snake next to a $6,000 snake, and they really don't understand what is the difference between these two snakes. Why is one worth so much? And let me tell you kind of the background of the scaleless head. So when Brian Barczyk actually imported that snake into the United States, it was the only scaleless head known in existence. And when he produced the first totally scaleless snake, it was the only one. And that's why it was worth so much. And someone actually buying that and investing in it and producing more of them can actually sell them at a premium. And you can make a lot of money as when they first come out. And it really comes down to supply and demand. And the other thing I've really heard is, over the years, I've heard this again and again, oh, the ball python market is dead, and what they're really talking about is that all these morphs that were worth a lot of money, now they've come down, and they're, coral glows were selling for $25,000, and now they're really inexpensive. You can pick them up for, a couple $100, and it's almost like you're looking in the past if you think that the ball python industry is dead. If you look to the future, there's a lot of stuff really neat that's coming out all the time, new morphs. And I think the scaleless head was one of the ones that kind of reset the ball python industry, because now you can have scaleless ball pythons in all these morphs. It's just like changing the base template to everything we've already produced, and now we can produce all those combinations in the scaleless. So I think the scaleless head project was actually kind of a double-edged sword, and there was actually a lot of big breeders that actually didn't get into the scaleless head project, and it was almost, I would say, almost too good to be true, because a lot of these morphs, what you really need to do, there's morphs like, you know, Cypress and the puzzle and the sunset and all these morphs that really, they come on the scene. They're the kind of the new stuff coming out, and they really have to be proven in order for people to buy into them. And the scaleless head, when it first came out, it was like a no-brainer. Everybody wanted to get into the scaleless ball pythons because it was just so awesome. And the problem is everyone really jumped on the bandwagon, got into the scaleless head, and what that really does is it floods the supply and it reduces the price really fast. So a lot of these snakes that were worth $45,000, now you can pick them up a lot of times just for a few $100 now. And it's only been, you know, 5 years where a lot of the projects like the Sunset that really haven't been proven out, they're still really holding their value because a lot of people aren't really buying into it, flooding the market and driving the prices down. So another thing to keep in mind is that the scaleless head ball python just has one copy of the gene, and to get a totally scaleless snake, you really need 2 copies of the gene to make the super. And I think that's really the long-term outlook for the scaleless project. It's kind of like working with the clowns and the pieds. It's really kind of a slow progression to get to the especially if you're working with the recessives, to actually get more genes back in with a totally scaleless ball python. And if you really think about, you know, you can buy a snake with 1 copy of the gene, just the scaleless head, run it through your collection, make a whole bunch of scaleless heads, and that's what really drives the price down. But I think the price is really going to hold really well long term for the totally scaleless that has 2 copies of the gene. So if you're wondering what the status is as far as the ball python market for the scaleless head and the totally scaleless ball python, where I really like to go is I like to go to morphmarket.com, and they have tens of thousands of ball pythons, and there's a lot of people that list their snakes on there for sale, and you can really see what's available, what's sold, and kind of what the status is as far as any particular gene. And I'm going to give you a quick tour of Morph Market and just kind of go through some of the scaleless and scaleless head ball pythons, and we can see how many are actually available and where we are as far as really moving this gene forward and how many have really been produced. Okay, so here it is. This is morphmarket.com, and actually to see some of the sold animals, you have to actually create an account and log in to see some of the past history. Otherwise, you can only see the snakes for sale. So I logged in and I sorted by the super scaleless head, and I sorted for sale and sold. So this is the total number of totally scaleless ball pythons that have ever been on Morph Market. And if you look over here, there has only been 14 for sale, which is not really very many considering there's so many snakes on here. I think at one point, if you look at the sold and for sale, there's like over 65,000 snakes on Morph Market. It's pretty, and that's just the ball pythons. There are so many other categories as well. So if you kind of look through what's sold and what's available, a lot of people now what they kind of do, instead of putting a price, you can see they put inquire, which is kind of a smarter way to go, I think, because then you can kind of negotiate a price instead of just, you know, everyone's competing and running down each other's prices, and it keeps driving the price lower and lower. So if you look here, you actually have one for sale, the scaleless 66% het pied for $10,000. You're taking a roll of the dice that it might be het pied. And it's a female from 17, so it looks like it actually might be ready to breed, which, oh, well, actually, it might be maybe another year before. It's typically 3 years before you breed them. But a lot of these, you can see the highest price for the scaleless that is actually sold. Here's one, a scaleless pastel possible het clown, for $30,000, sold in 2017, which is pretty incredible. And then from here you can see there's the butter scaleless for $12,500. Here's a butter scaleless for $8,000 that sold. And if you scroll down here, here's one that sold just last year, 2018. A Firefly totally scaleless, sold for $8,500, and that's quite a drop from the $150,000 from 5 years ago. But I mean, people have really worked to breed the totally scaleless. And here is Mystic Scaleless, totally scaleless ball python from 2018 for $8,000. It's a female. Scaleless Pinstripe, 100% het VPIA Xanthic, $6,500. It's pretty incredible. Here's a Pastel Scaleless that sold in 2018 for $5,000. That's a lot cheaper than I thought it was going to be. And I actually opened up another page over here. This is scaleless head that are available, not the scaleless head that's sold, just the ones that are available. And you can see there's like a Mystic scaleless head from last year. It's selling for $8,000. And this kind of mixes in some of the scaleless with the scaleless head, which is kind of interesting. Here's a Scaleless Pinstripe for $6,500. This is from 2017. A lot of these are from 2017, and a lot of the snakes on here, I always wonder if they're really still available, if they've taken their ad down. And sometimes I've actually contacted some of these people, and they won't even reply. They just kind of leave their ads up, and I think it kind of gets overblown, where a lot of people on Morph Market are actually the snakes sold, but they just don't have the ads taken down. And what I really like to do, especially if for the available snakes, I look for the year. Usually if it's for like a 2018, here's a Super Mystic Scaleless Head Ball Python selling for $2,500. A Pastel for $2,000. And it kind of goes on and on. I opened a couple more pages. If you kind of click through the lower and lower prices as you go down and further, here's the world's first scaleless head spot nose pastavi. Of course, almost anything with the scaleless head now, you're going to be the world's first, because it's especially if you produce the totally scaleless now. There's not a lot of people that are actually at that point where we're producing stuff. And when the scaleless head first came out, almost everything you breed it to, it's the world's first, which is kind of cool. You're on top of the game as you go. And here's the third page as we reduce prices further and further down of just the scaleless head stuff. Here is a scaleless head het pied for $1,250 from 2018. Still holding its price pretty good. Here's a banana scaleless head for $1,200. I definitely want to run my bananas into this project. I have coral glows, kind of the same thing as bananas. I just haven't got to that point yet. And here is the last page. I actually saw on this last page over here that there's quite a few more pages, but I kind of stopped at the third page. They actually have a pastel. Let's see. I think it was up a little bit. They had a pastel scaleless head for, I think it was $1,000. Right. Here's a pastel blade scaleless head. The blade is a reduction, comes from the clown, but it's pretty interesting to see where it's at, and all these different. If you look up here at the top, this is 61 through 80 of 231 ball pythons. I actually thought there's going to be quite a few more scaleless head ball pythons, but keep in mind it's early in the spring, and pretty much everything from the fall is sold, and the prices keep getting driven up higher and higher as the supply runs out, and everyone's kind of waiting until, especially after the spring shows, the prices get really high until the late summer, and everyone starts producing all the hatchlings again. So this is kind of neat, where you can kind of see all the different hatchlings and see what's available out there. And I'm actually kind of surprised that there's not more totally scaleless yet out there. There's only I think there was 14 ball pythons that were totally scaleless. And if you look at the ones that are available, there's only a handful of available ones. Let's see, 1, 2. There's only 3 that are available that are totally scaleless, which is pretty amazing. Okay, so that wraps up my discussion of the most expensive snake in the history of reptiles, and that is the ball python. That was worth $150,000, the totally scaleless ball python. So thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.